to sex and all the good things in life. We bring good things to life. Good evening, everyone. Ted Santos coming to you live on Friday night. And man, do we have a topic. You know, in YouTube and Chill, we like talking about sex. Well, tonight will not disappoint. We are going to address sex. We are going to talk about it. I know everyone loves doing it instead of just talking about it. Well, let's put some facts on the table as opposed to all the assumptions and presuppositions and beliefs that people have around sex. Let's talk about the facts of life, the birds and the bees, doing it in the trees. Hope everyone had a great week. Hey, good morning already. What's going on, PJ? All right, right. It's midnight for you guys. Good morning to you. How is it in London? Don't tell me it's foggy, right? So you know I like to do a share screen. I'm going to do that today. Good evening, everyone. Instagram, we're going to be talking about sex, talking about sex. Is it the most important part of a relationship? You hear all kinds of controversy. So I am going to do my best to stay away from my opinion. I'm going to bring in the experts. I'm going to share my screen. So if you'd like to see the screen and you're on Instagram, I'm going to read quite a bit of stuff. But I did a lot of research and looking at how important is sex in a relationship. So I'm going to do a screen share if you guys would like to see it. Hey, what's going on, Gene? Thanks. Thank you, man. Thank you. I know you're not in Marlborough anymore, but I take it as from Marlborough. I'm going to talk about sex today. You know, the thing that got us all here. So, hey, PJ, isn't it always cold in London? I mean, you guys, you know, the joke, comedians make a joke that London gets 3 days of summer somewhere in July, all 3 days. Wait, you're in California or back in Jersey, Gene? Hey, and you know, on YouTube, the original post I made for this, YouTube wasn't excited about it, so I had to do something with the spelling. They apparently don't always like when I talk about sex. Well, you're in Morganville. All right, cool. All right, good. All right, so you're here in Jersey with me. I thought you lived out in California, Gene. So I had this. I set this up. I set this show up much earlier, only to come back to see YouTube had removed it because they don't like the spelling of sex. Maybe they thought I was going to do some porn. If you guys remember, I did a show on BDSM, and they didn't have a problem with that. But this one, we're going to get a little bit, we're going to bring in a little science. We're going to bring in a little steamy heat. Oh, really? Okay. All right, cool. I was, okay, I mixed you up with someone. There's another Eugene out in California, and my brother lives in LA, and whoever that Eugene is lives right near my brother. So guys, smash this, smash the like button when you come in. Share this. I have my PayPal and Cash App links. Always appreciate the support. But share this video. It may have gotten a little bit mixed up with YouTube making changes. But we're going to talk about sex. We're going to get with the facts. How important is sex? I think people might underestimate the value of sex. And when you think about 38% of marriages are sexless, that's just unbelievable. That's almost 40%, and 40%, that's really close to half. All right, cool. All right. Good. Yeah. He and I speak at least once or twice a week, so I'll speak to him this weekend. With 38% of marriages being sexless, that's a great example of how people don't really understand the value of sex and how it impacts their relationship and other parts of their life. So sex is a great resource. I think it's underestimated. And maybe we, hey, it's good. Climax is good. Don't want to underestimate that. The value of sex and what it does for your mind and your body and in your relationship in general, I think people are missing out. And that's according to the scientific community, not my opinion. So I have a number of screens to share. Interesting perspectives. Studies. They actually have done studies to see the impact of sex and why it's good. So maybe I'll start. I'll start by discussing an extreme aspect of sex. I just had to look at this. If I look at things, I like to look at the pros and cons, right? So I once heard someone say that Bill Clinton was a pretty good leader in the sense that when he would ask his team something, his cabinet members, for example, should we go to war? If they said yes, he'd say, come back in a week and go and give me all the reasons why not. So I like to do that. I like to look at the opposition so I can have a much fuller understanding of the subject matter. So I did since I am saying that sex is great and it's healthy, I looked at what happens when there's too much. How much sex is too much? So I wanted to see what's too much sex. Can it be bad? If everyone's saying sex is good for you, I wanted to look and see, are there times when it's not good for you? So I wanted to look at that before we got into all the hot and steamy facts. So where is this? Health.com is the website. And the title of the article is How Much Sex is Too Much? Here's what experts say. The answer may surprise you. Claire Gillespie, and this is just from last year, November 20th, 2020. And this is what Claire writes. And I'm always surprised when I see this statistic about how many times the average couple has sex. The average adult has sex 54 times a year, once a week, basically, with a few extras thrown in. I mean, that's, I guess we've become a society and we are that busy that that's all we have time for is sex once a week. Like, get that relationship obligation, you just throw it in there. And there's a bonus, I guess, for Christmas and New Year's or birthdays, Valentine's Day. So I'm just blown away. Once a week is what the average couple does. Yeah, SW. So I've spoken about those women, and they actually jam their whole brain up by having sex with a whole bunch of different dudes. So it's hard for them to get the value out of sex. They actually reverse it by having sex with a lot of different guys. A woman's body wasn't made for that. So let's get back to this article here. The average adult has sex 54 times a year, once a week, basically, with a few extras thrown in, according to a study published in Archives of Sexual Behavior in 2017. If your personal average is a lot higher, you might be wondering how much sex is too much, and what are the repercussions of having too much sex anyway. Let us put your mind at ease with help from Rebecca Brightman, MD, assistant clinical professor at obstetrics, gynecology and reproductive medicine at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai Health Systems in New York City. That's right here. New York was almost like a sex capital at one time. That was long ago. I don't know if it still holds that reputation. Spain may have it now. The definition of frequent sex is variable, and if it feels good and doesn't hurt, then sex at any frequency is okay, said Brightman, tells Health. In other words, get your freak on to your heart's content, as long as you're not experiencing any adverse effects. So too much sex might be up to the individual. However, it does help to know some signs that you should maybe give your body some respite from sex, your own personal too much warnings, if you like. So it goes on to say, having too much sex, what are the risks? So we're going to talk about the risks of too much sex. Very interesting, PJ. Really? Wow. So they're attempting to shut it down from the boys in school. So no MGTOW, huh? Because here in the US, they're doing it as teenagers. Interesting. Thanks for telling me that, PJ. That means it's on its way here to the US. So having too much sex, what are the risks? The main physical hazard of having a lot of sex is excessive swelling of the vagina and labia. Sherry A. Ross, OBGYN and women's health expert in Santa Monica, California, and author of Sheology and Sheology. The sequel tells Health. With a lot of sexual stimulation, the vagina and labia become engorged with blood, and this can lead to excessive swelling and pain with sexual contact, she says. So I guess that's what happens when you are laying it down like an Olympic champion, and she hasn't trained for you. A long sex session can also cause the natural lubrication of the vagina to dry up, which can lead to friction and pain. If you haven't had the right amount of foreplay to become sexually aroused and get wet, the vagina will be dry. And there's a lot of you guys say if she's with the beta male, the guy she really didn't want to be with, she may be drying up anyway, even though she's thinking about some other guy. So making sex painful when the penis or fingers enter the vagina. Dr. Ross says. She points out that vaginal dryness can also occur in menopausal women, resulting in a burning sensation inside the vagina during sexual contact and penetration. If you end up with a swollen and/or sore vagina after sexual contact, back off until you feel okay, Dr. Brightman says. You know, there are a lot of women who if you have sex with them like multiple times, 7, 8, 10 times in a day, they'll try to keep going, even though their body, their vagina isn't really handling it. And it's very interesting to watch how women will try and hang. Oh, very interesting, PJ. Wow. So the boys are listening. Drop the link for that article, PJ. Hey, buddy. Thanks for joining. So she gives some advice for women. If you end up with a swollen and/or sore vagina after sexual contact, back off until you feel okay. She says, if the swelling seems excessive, try an ice pack for some relief. So any of you guys have been with a woman and she needed an ice pack with you? So next time you do it, consider using vaginal lubricant or extra virgin coconut oil to create extra wetness in the vaginal for a prolonged sex session. She doesn't say what prolonged is. For chafing, Aquaphor or a similar product can help to soothe the affected areas, she says. Can men have too much sex? Men can also experience similar discomfort when they overdo it, Dr. Ross points out. The penis can experience soreness, swelling, and chafing, and a man may have difficulty urinating. Speaking of penises, bigger isn't always better, especially if you're having a lot of sex. While a thicker penis makes the vagina feel more full, being overly stretched can be painful and uncomfortable, and it might even cause vaginal tears. Yep, and when that woman gets the vaginal tear, she's going to still want to keep going. Even if she ends up being out of commission. The more sex you have, the greater the risk of bladder and vaginal infections. This is due to disruption to natural pH balance of the vagina. When bacteria from vagina and anus fluid, vagina and anus find their way into the bladder. To help prevent this, get into the habit of emptying your bladder after having sexual penetration with your partner. So she's not really saying what too much is. In some cases, the side effect of having a lot of sex might call for medical attention. If you have any abnormal discharge, unusual or persistent bleeding evidence or tearing pain or with urination or persistent vulvar pain, get it checked by your health care provider. But if the only thing all that sex has left you with is a feeling of satisfaction and perhaps a little fatigue, There's no reason why you can't keep going. As long as there is proper lubrication and consensual breaks in between going under the sheets, you're not in any danger. Communication is vital. Listen to your body. So I read a few articles like this. No one actually says what's too much. They just say, listen to your body. So average couple having sex once a week, it seems to be fine. We're actually talking about, is sex the most important part of a relationship? Is it? Is sex the most important thing? Can great sex make a relationship work? Right? We're looking at these questions. And what do science and research say about sex and healthy relationships? That's what we're here to discover. What is it we're missing when it comes to sex? Did you drop the link, PJ? Or am I missing it? So, let's see. You did. Why the hell don't I see it? That's interesting. I don't see the link, PJ. Hey, PJ, I don't see it. Can you drop it again? Looks like someone read it. What's going on, Imperator? Looks like you saw the link. For some reason, I don't see it in here. So, so we will have one perspective where they say it's possible to have too much sex, and these are the signs. So I want to give another interesting perspective on what this article calls maintenance sex. Anyone know what maintenance sex is? That's crazy. I don't see it. Do not see it. Hey, PJ, send it here. Send it to that email. For some reason, it's not showing up. That's wild. So the experts claim you can have too much sex. And yes, I hear what you're saying, cooperation. But hey, isn't sex one of the most cooperative things people can do? And what happens when, yeah, I wonder how much sex impacts cooperation. This article kind of addresses that. So let's look at this. This is in the magazine called Brides: Why Maintenance Sex is So Important in Happy Marriages. Gigi Engel, it's updated September 24th of 2020. This one's written by a woman. And this is, I think this is an interesting perspective that what women are told to do about sex. And I just wonder how this affects relationships. So, maintenance sex, that's what they're calling this. Why maintenance sex is so important in happy marriages. Maintenance sex may not sound like the most titillating thing in the world, but it is crucial to the health of your relationship. When we say maintenance sex, we mean having sex just to have it, even if you don't feel like doing it. It means keeping the sex up to ensure both people in the relationship are sexually satisfied. Sometimes your partner wants to get it on, and all you want to do is binge your latest Netflix obsession. Sex sounds time consuming and annoying. Or maybe when you really want to have sex, your partner always seems to be too tired or stressed. In long term relationships, it's important to have sex even if you're not necessarily randy. Maintenance sex shouldn't be the only kind of sex you're having, but it should absolutely be on the menu. There will always be two different sex drives in a relationship. Uh, there will inevitably be times in a relationship when one partner wants to have sex and the other doesn't. It's rare for two people to have matching sex drives. It happens occasionally, but to expect that your partner will always want the exact amount of sex as you do is not particularly practical. Here's a bride's tip. In order to make up for the difference, compromises need to be made. The partner with the higher libido must have realistic expectations, while the partner with the lower libido needs to do the same. This is where maintenance sex comes into play. See, this is why I talk about compatibility. All right, I get what they're saying, but they're telling this is an article written in Brides magazine, so it's targeted to women. It's tips for brides. And just have sex not because you want to, you're just filling in a time slot, like it's a quota. There's a quota system. Average couple has sex once a month. So I guess if you fill your quota, I'm sorry, not once a month, once a week. If she fills her quota of once a week. So what's going on with sex drive? They say people are having less sex now than they were 40 years ago. We're fed this idea, and I also find it interesting that telling women that you're not really going to be in a mood, you'd rather watch TV, I just wonder what this does to the mind of women, telling them that you usually don't want to have sex. And women actually do want to have sex much more than what we're telling them. We're fed this idea that we should only have sex when we're in the mood. This is how unfulfilled sexless marriages happen. And as you know, 38% of marriages are sexless. One partner isn't in the mood and doesn't think he or she needs to be, and therefore the partner with the higher libido feels ashamed for wanting sex. This leaves one partner feeling hounded for sex all the time, and the other pathetic for wanting it. Not a healthy relationship. You won't regret having it. Maintenance sex is designed to keep both partners content. When you're in a long-term relationship or marriage, you won't regret putting in the extra effort to have sex, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, if this is the only way you're having sex, there is a problem. If you feel fully sexually unsatisfied or are experiencing an unusually prolonged dip in libido, that is separate issue, and you should address it with your therapist or healthcare provider. Sex is like going to the gym. You don't want to do it before, but once you suck it up and hit the elliptical, you feel amazing afterward. Uh, so, and here's where I'm getting with this whole study and what they're saying. It breeds intimacy. Sex breeds intimacy. Orgasms release oxytocin, the feel-good bonding hormone in your body. Sex helps you feel closer to your partner. It is the most intimate physical act, and you and your partner can experience. Without it, it's easy to lose sight of your connection, relationships, and healthy sex life. Take constant work. You have to check in with each other, and take temperature of your relationship on a regular basis. Having sex, feeling your partner on top of you, the scent of his or her skin brings you back into the loving mindset. Don't skip out on it just because you're tired from work and would rather watch television. Having maintenance sex will remind both of you what you mean to one another, and always take an opportunity to work sex into your schedule. The more you have it, the happier you'll be. Trust us. Well, there's a statistic, and you guys have heard me say it. Couples that have sex 4 times a week or more earn higher incomes and have more fulfilling marriages or relationships than those who have it less. So, yeah, country boy, that exactly, maintenance sex, right? Some obligatory sex that you just they're telling brides, just let them, just have it, just give them your body, just turn it over, even if you're not interested. I guess maybe that happens. People talk about women who don't get the guy that they really want. They get some second or third runner up, so they're probably just not even sexually interested in the guy. And that's where you can have big problems like that. So there's a study that addresses this. Yeah, we do need to get sex back in order, no question. So there is a study, and they talk about, actually, they did some serious research, serious studies on this. Uh, they invited thousands and thousands of couples, newly married couples, just married within a few months, and they wanted them to participate in a survey about sex. Let's see. I want to share with you guys what this study was all about. See, this is not about maintenance sex. This article is written in the Association for Psychological Science. So they had some real doctors and scientists participate in this and do all kind of statistical analysis, sociologists, psychologists, all revolving around sex. And what they found is a 48-hour sexual afterglow helps to bond partners over time. So I get the whole thing with maintenance sex, but I think people are actually missing out on how valuable sex can be. And they looked at the science behind it. This article was written March 20th of 2017, and it's a 48-hour sexual afterglow helps to bond partners over time. An article says sex plays a central role in reproduction and it can be pleasurable, but scientific findings suggest that it may serve an additional purpose, bonding partners together. A study of newlywed couples published in Psychological Science, a journal of the Association for Psychological Science, indicates that partners experience a sexual afterglow that lasts for up to 2 days, and this afterglow is linked to the relationship quality over the long term. What's up, Penthouse? Talking about sex and whether or not it's the most important thing in a relationship. And I'm looking at this article in the Association for Psychological Science where they did a very serious study with newlywed couples. Most of these people were in their 20s, mid-20s, newly married, and they wanted to track sex and what was the impact of having sex on the quality of the relationship in the beginning and as well, months down the road. And they say, here's what they said: our research shows that sexual satisfaction remains elevated 48 hours after sex, says psychological scientist Andrea Meltzer. She's a lead author on the study. And people with a stronger sexual afterglow, that is, people who report a higher level of sexual satisfaction 48 hours after sex, report higher levels of relationship satisfaction several months later. So the research had theorized that sex plays a crucial role in pair bonding, that most adults report having sex with their partners every few days, not every day. So that's why I talked about is such a thing as too much sex. So no one wants to say what too much is. I saw somewhere it said if you have sex once a week and you double that and have it twice a week, for some couples that could be too much. So the article goes, the lead person on this study, Meltzer and colleagues, hypothesized that sex might provide a short-term boost to sexual satisfaction, sustaining the pair bond between the sexual experiences and enhancing partners' relationship satisfaction over the long term. To test their hypothesis, the researchers examined data from two independent longitudinal studies, one with 96 newlywed couples and the other with 118 newlywed couples. All of the couples had completed at least 3 consecutive days of a 14-day daily diary as part of a larger study. Every night before going to bed, the newlyweds were asked to report independently whether they had sex with their partner that day. Regardless of the answer, they were also asked to rate how satisfied they were with their sex life, and that day how satisfied they were with their partner, their relationship, and their marriage that day on a 7-point scale, 1 not at all, 7 extremely. Look, I get that sex is not just about coming, and they are saying here, I mean, just hear what they're saying. The partners also completed 3 measures of marriage quality at the beginning of the study and again at a follow-up session about 4 to 6 months later. So they're looking at, and these couples had already been married several months. Just about all of them had been in a relationship for at least 2 years before getting married. And now they've been married several months and they're participating in this study. And they checked over the first 14 days at the beginning of the study, and then they checked back with them 4 to 6 months later to see what the correlation was between sexual activity and relationship satisfaction. And there is one. So when couples are at 38% of marriages that are sexless, and that's the other thing. These are only married couples, so they didn't want to do couples just shacking up. These are married couples, and all, like I said, in their 20s. One group was first-time marriage. The other group was a second-time marriage. On average, participants reported having sex on 4 of the 14 days of the study, though answers varied considerably across participants. Importantly, sex on a given day was linked with lingering sexual satisfaction over time. Having sex on a given day was linked with sexual satisfaction that same day, which was linked with sexual satisfaction the next day and even 2 days later. In other words, participants continued to report elevated sexual satisfaction 48 hours after a single act of sex. Importantly, this association did not differ according to participants' gender or age, and it held even after sexual frequency, personality traits, length of relationship, and other factors were taken out. See, when women use sex as a weapon, they don't realize how much damage they are doing to the relationships. Sex is not something that you toy with or you use it as a carrot or something to reward. It's just a very natural part of the intimacy, and it plays from what they're saying, it plays a huge role in the satisfaction of the relationship and the intimacy. And using it as a bargaining chip can damage a relationship. And if you keep using it, well, it's permanent. It can be permanent damage. And even though the woman believes that gives her a sense of control by controlling sex. Overall, participants' marital satisfaction declined between the beginning of the study and the follow-up session 4 to 6 months later. So that's interesting. You guys hear that? The participants' marital satisfaction declined between the beginning of the study and the follow-up session 4 to 6 months later. But participants who reported relatively high levels of sexual afterglow seemed to fare better relative to their peers, reporting higher initial marital satisfaction and less steep declines in satisfaction across the first 4 to 6 months of marriage. That's important. Hey, yeah, it's biology. Well, PJ, I would say we don't fully understand sex and the impact it has on humans. So we've turned sex into a transaction. Very difficult to have a satisfied sex life or marriage or relationship. The article goes on to say the same pattern effects emerged in 2 independent studies providing robust evidence for sexual afterglow. Meltzer and colleagues note. Together, the findings suggest that sex is linked with relationship quality over time, though the lingering effects of sexual satisfaction over time through the lingering effects, right? So sex one day has a positive effect for the next 48 hours is what it's saying. So the more 48-hour satisfaction you have, the better chances you have of having a satisfying relationship. And I don't know if this is fully understood. Right, PJ, the problem is it's transactional. And that can kill intimacy. Like I'll have sex with you in order to get you to do something, or have sex with you if you do something, like a reward system, as opposed to having sex be just as essential as talking, as communicating, as doing things together. This research is important because it joins other research suggesting that sex functions to keep couples pair bonded, Meltzer concludes. See, this pair bonding. And so someone said if sex was SW, that was you. So see, there's the problem. When women have sex with too many partners, then she has a problem pair bonding. When she finally meets someone who she believes, like, this guy is the one, she is now either incapable, or it's going to be very difficult for her to pair bond. And so sex is really important. Men can have multiple sex partners and not be emotionally traumatized. Women don't have that biology to do that. Co-authors on a study include okay. So I'm not going to go through this whole study, but the study is in, it's the same, Association for Psychological Science, quantifying the sexual afterglow, lingering benefits of sex and their implications for pair bonded couples. And the abstract just says sex presumably facilitates pair bonding, but how do partners remain pair bonded between sexual acts? Evolutionary perspective suggests that sexual afterglow serves this purpose. We explored how long sexual satisfaction would remain elevated following sex and predicted that stronger sexual afterglow would characterize more satisfying partnerships. We pulled the data from 2 independent longitudinal studies of newlywed couples to examine the issues. Spouses reported their daily sexual activity. Bob, you guys heard that already. So, you see, people are playing with sex in a way that they're not getting the most out of it. Right? People have diminished sex, like, many people already know, to a transaction. What's going on, Red Pill? We're talking about, is sex the most important part of a relationship? So if sex, look, I get it. Cooperation, being able to talk, communication. Sex is possibly the most form of communication any couple can do together. And it keeps you pair bonded. If you're in a monogamous relationship, it keeps the intimacy between the couple. It prolongs the intimacy and the satisfaction of the relationship. So the more days, the more weeks, the more months you go without sex, then the less likely you're going to have that pair bonding, the less likely you're going to have the intimacy. And yes, you can have intimacy in other ways. You can do massages, and you can have late night deep conversations. Yes, you can do all of those things. But sex, none of those things will have the same effect that, and they looked at that also. 48 hours after having sex, they call this afterglow. So nothing is having an impact on the couple being bonded, pair bonding, like sex. Sex can do it for up to 48 hours after. And this is why the whole notion of using sex as a transaction or a bargaining chip is really just killing relationships. Hey, Brian, thanks. Glad to see you here. Yep, Brian, the sex is 80% of the relationship, assuming both people are young enough to have sex. Well, and they oh yeah, absolutely, PJ. Sex should never be considered dirty. Just think the fact that you can create life. How can sex be filthy or dirty when you actually create life from it? And I think we just don't fully understand it. But Brian, you say it's 80% of the relationship. So this is the study here, and it's pretty long. So let's see if I can pull out conclusion. So here's one of the things that came out of it. Sex is a defining feature of a romantic relationships, assumed not only to promote successful reproduction, but also to facilitate pair bonding. There are, however, significant costs to having constant or uninterrupted sex. We pulled data. In other words, if you just keep having sex, you won't go to work, you may not eat. There are other things. You may not take a shower. Uh, Sex can actually can be an opportunity cost, right? So that's, I guess, in the beginning of this, I talked about, can you have too much sex? And there was an article that talked about, if you're having so much sex that you're not accomplishing anything else in life, that's a problem. And that's in addition to whether it talked about a woman's body being sore or her vagina's ripped, being exhausted, having all kinds of discharges and problems, urinary infections. So, what it can, too much sex can make you unproductive, right? You just stay in the bed. But what it does for the couple is much more profound than uh, just the climax. And take reproduction out of it. Sex is extremely valuable. I mean, a woman's only going to carry one child for 9 months, so she's not giving birth every day. So sex plays other roles. So it says, following a single occurrence of sex, participants reported enhanced sexual satisfaction that lasts 48 hours, but not 72 hours. So they really they were very thorough in a lot of things they looked at. That they also, someone has done a similar study, so they also matched to see if they had similar outcomes. Further, participants who reported relatively high levels of this sexual afterglow 48 hours after engaging in sex also reported relatively high levels of marital satisfaction at the time of marriage and remained more satisfied over the subsequent months of marriage compared with participants who reported relatively low levels of sexual afterglow after engaging. So that also goes to, was the sex satisfying? So, I get the whole thing. People want to say, let's be freaky and BDSM and all this stuff. But this is really getting at the act of sex being fulfilling and satisfying, and the impact that it has on the relationship, on the marriage. Like I said, this particular study was only done with married couples, newlyweds. Hey, PJ, I wonder if women are looking at it as being divine. I I think somehow they figured out uh, how to just make it a transaction. Hey, Brian, I think you're saying no sex kills your testosterone. I think you're saying that. There are also studies that show when men don't have enough sex, it can actually damage. It's not good for the prostate. You think it's stupidity too, country boy? Okay, this is what I was saying. Okay. So it says, finally, at a broader level, these findings highlight the importance of the duration of interpersonal experiences from the interpersonal well-being. To date, most research on human social relationships has examined the immediate and long-term implications of discrete psychological experiences. For example, rejection, praise, forgiveness, and apology all have measurable effects on relationships. So this is what I was saying before. All of these things like rejection, praise, forgiveness, apology, they have measurable effects on your relationship. And this study goes on to say, but the current work suggests that the duration of such experiences, that is, the length of their aftermath, is an additional factor worth examining in its own right. How long people remain happy following a compliment, angry, allowing a fight, or motivated following a setback. So um, I don't think they want to include that. They've done these studies in the past. In some, the current research suggests that sexual satisfaction remains elevated 48 hours after sex on average, and that this sexual afterglow functions to promote long-term pair bonding. Future research may benefit from examining predictors, moderators, and other implications. Let's see. Uh, yeah, I think I've said this already. I just received the Cash App from Judith. Thank you, Judith. Thank you for the Cash App. Thank you. Thank you for the love. Thank you for that. Thank you for the support. Second, if couples experience a sexual afterglow, does it predict relationship outcomes over time? If afterglow functions to facilitate pair bonding, intimates with a stronger afterglow, stronger association between sex and lingering sexual satisfaction, may remain more satisfied with their relationships over time. The second aim of the current research was to examine the association between intimate sexual afterglow and the prospective relationship satisfaction. We pulled the data from 2 independent longitude studies of newlywed couples. So that's what they wanted to see. And that is essentially what they were able to discover, was that sex did increase pair bonding. It did create relationship satisfaction. And the couples that had less sex uh, were less satisfied, less satisfied with the relationship, immediate and a few months down the line. Hey, PJ, you may have put it in wrong. So there are 3 Ds. Maybe I put it in wrong. Oh, I think I may have done it wrong. I think I put it in wrong. PJ, try that. Yeah, Brian, exactly. Yeah, not ejaculating. You know, and it's interesting, Brian, that you say that, because I've seen women get upset uh, when you explain to them why you're not going to ejaculate every time. You're releasing life, a life force. That's a lot of energy. It depletes a man. I mean, there are things you can do to replace what you expend, what you release, to maintain your health. I found something. I don't remember the name of the book, but a woman created something. Oh, interesting. A woman created a special concoction made up of raw pumpkin seeds and some other things. That's why I suggested to you guys raw pumpkin seeds, unsalted, uncooked, just raw. Very healthy for the prostate. But yeah, a man ejaculating every time you have sex is not in his best interest. Yeah, so you can have great sex with a woman and not want to be in a relationship with her. That is correct. See, that's why I talk about compatibility, right? So sexual compatibility is really important. It's just not the only thing. I mean, if you're not compatible about how you manage money, if you want to have children, how you want to educate, if you want to homeschool and she wants to put them in a public school, or you want private school and she wants public, you guys end up debating and fighting about that. That's going to be a problem. If she wants to live in one kind of neighborhood and you want to live in another. Um, Look, money management, how she handles conflict, that's a huge that's a huge factor. A lot of people say religion, but I've seen a lot of couples that were like just not in the same religion. One was a Buddhist and the other one was a Christian, and they'd been married 20, 30 years and it never interfered. Hey, country boy, to an extent, yes, the quality, except if you have quality sex just once a month, that really isn't, that's kind of insufficient. Even if it's 5 hours once a month. Yeah, one of the things that you lose protein, you lose, I think it's like 3,000 milligrams of protein. So if you ejaculate and you take a protein powder that has like 30 grams of protein, you'll actually see a difference. But there was a book that I've read, and this woman, it was pumpkin seeds, lecithin, and she had like exact quantities. And I did that when I was in my 20s. I lived with a woman 5 years, and maybe after the 3 year mark, she had this book written by a woman. The book was for women, and she had a chapter in the book about men's health. And there was this concoction, just I think it was, I'll say it was all natural ingredients that you would blend up in a juice. And man, when I drank that thing, it was to replenish what a man lost. It was very interesting, the impact it had after I ejaculated and drank that concoction. All natural. And this was way before Viagra, like way before. So And hey, PJ, for sure, what I've seen is ejaculate. Take a really good protein powder, especially if it's a high quality one. Um, it helps. It's not the nutrients. It's you're losing protein. It's you're releasing life force from your body. Yeah, country boy, there is no question. You can have sex for 5 straight hours and not ejaculate at all. I mean, there's a way to even, or there's a way to have like that kind of consistent control. You know, it's like many things if you practice it. But you also there are certain breathing. There's a getting in tune. Like if you penetrate the woman um, and just both relax and get in tune, somehow that has a positive effect on being able to control how long it takes to ejaculate. I've seen it consistent. I don't remember how long do you wait? I don't know if I had a time. Maybe it's 5 minutes of like no movement, just penetrate and just be still. And then you can go for a very long time. Now the catch is if if you have sex with a with a woman. When I lived in Mexico, women could climax like clockwork in 5 minutes. Like uh, not only every woman I had been with, the guys from the U.S. who hung out there or lived there for a while, they had the same results in 5 minutes. In 15 minutes, that's 3 times she climaxed, and then she was pooped. She was tired. She needed a break. What happened is over time, after a couple of weeks of that, she gets accustomed to going more than 15 minutes. She can go 30 minutes. She can go 45. She can go an hour. So the point I'm making is a woman's body will adjust. It will adjust. She may get tired in the beginning, but eventually her body adjusts to you and the frequency and the amount. Also, I was reading, not in these articles, the more sex you have, the more sex you can have. Your body, as a man and a woman, your body adjusts to that, to the frequency. So yes, a man can train his mind and his body to not ejaculate and have sex with the woman until until she like does a timeout. She needs a timeout, and then you do it again. You get that can be done several times in a day. And yes, PJ, uh, a woman who takes care of you after a bad day of work, and it's a great way to bond with her. And PJ, probably because they've been told that they could have sex with a lot of different guys. So there's a book called Hooked, and the book was written by two gynecologists, a male and female gynecologist. And in the book, they talk specifically about the consequences of a woman having sex with multiple men. There are studies out there that say when a woman has sex with the the sixth man, not the first one, not the second, not the third, fourth, not the fifth, but when she gets to number 6, she's 3 times less likely to be in a stable relationship. 3 times less likely. When she gets to 7, 8, Each time those numbers go up, right? She's at 10, 11, 12, those numbers go up. The less likely she's going to be in a stable relationship, because in this book, Hooked, written by two gynecologists, like I said, a man and woman, they said there's this bond and break. So women secrete oxytocin. Men, it takes us much longer time to secrete oxytocin. We don't secrete as much, and testosterone blocks it. So here's what happens with the woman. She bonds, like she secretes oxytocin to even want to have sex with a guy. And if it's a one-night stand or a 6-month relationship, she secretes oxytocin for that duration, and then she breaks off the relationship. So it's the bonding, secreting oxytocin, and then the break. And then she does that again, bond and break. She does it again, bond and break. If she keeps doing that, she hits the 6th guy, the 7th. That eventually causes emotional trauma in a woman's brain. So then the more she traumatizes her brain, right, she may start to have problems secreting oxytocin. And then her high is from dopamine. So then it becomes easier for her. So she's not getting like I just read these about pair bonding and couples having sex and how it creates greater intimacy and more fulfilling relationship. She's not going to secrete oxytocin like a woman who hasn't had sex with a lot of guys. So what she's going to get off on is dopamine. And so dopamine, yes, your body secretes, the brain secretes dopamine from sex, but it can also secrete dopamine from gifts and being taken on expensive dates and exciting outings, right? So when you hear women talking about, you have to do something that's exciting for me, then they start needing BDSM and all kinds of acrobatic tricks to get any kind of fulfillment, because they're having a much more difficult time secreting oxytocin because they've done bond break, and they start to create some deviance. They are, I hate to use the word deforming, but they are putting their brain under activities that their brain was not designed to handle. So there's an aberration, right? There's an irregular activity that their brain does not handle, and that bond break, and the implications are even worse, because when you talk about the postpartum that women have, and you hear about women who will kill their children or hurt them, become violent. Those women, they're finding are deficient in certain neurochemicals that women need to bond with their children. And oxytocin is a major one. So see, women who are promiscuous can be a threat to your bank account, right, and your assets, because she hasn't bonded with you properly. And if she just wants out, like, she doesn't care. She's just looking for the next dopamine high, not an oxytocin secretion. She's getting off on the excitement, and she may be just off on the excitement of someone just chasing her. And if you're married in a stable relationship, like the study I just read, where couples are having sex and pair bonding, she may have a difficult time or not be able to pair bond. So sex is just a transaction, and she's looking for the dopamine high, a dopamine rush, instead of the oxytocin. And that's not going to be much of a relationship. See, women think they can just do anything and there are no consequences. But this study is showing that sex is extremely important. And if you look at nature, well, nature set up men so that in case of emergency and there's one man left on a planet and 100 women, he can impregnate all 100 women. in less than 30 days. Women don't have that. They were not created for that. So sex is really important. So in this book, Hooked, it really just outlines, and these are gynecologists who have a lot of experience in dealing with women and their vaginas. They really have to understand it. And they write that it's a bad idea for women to have many multiple sex partners. And I understand lots of women will lie about how many partners they've had, their numbers. I just did you guys probably saw, some of you, a video I just did a few days ago, top 10 reasons men should avoid being in a committed relationship. And her body count was one of the things that I put in there. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. I was going to do top 5, but the list kept growing. So I had to break the video up and do 5 in one video and 5 in another. Hey, PJ, that's an interesting question. I don't know if monogamy is natural or not. I just don't. I mean, I hear the case and I see animals. I see the lions and the dogs and the chimpanzees and gorillas. I see all this. Horses. I don't know if that's the exact case for humans. I mean, wolves will have monogamous relationships. They mate with one. There are quite a few animals that are monogamous. So I don't know what the facts are. Like, so we live in a human paradigm that's distinct from barnyard animals, like the animals you see in a barn, like the bull and the cows, the cats and the dogs. So I don't know. Here's the real question is, why would a woman want a man to be monogamous if she's not planning to fulfill his sexual needs? That's why compatibility is important. If there's no sexual compatibility, with this study I just did, you can see why sexual compatibility is so important, with 38% of marriages being sexless. You know, if both couples are not really interested in sex, then they are sexually compatible. I get that. But there are women who go into marriages with a guy and will have a lot of sex with him before they're married, and then poof, all of a sudden it starts drying up. Once a week, once a month. Hey man, look, you could be attracted to sweets, to junk food, right? And that's not sugar is basically a drug, man. You can smoke crack and it feels good. Doesn't mean it's natural. The coca leaf, on the other hand, usually it always grows in high elevation, and it's there because when you chew on it, it puts more oxygen in your body, and it makes it easier for you to work at high altitudes without getting altitude sickness. So there's a natural reason. But when we turn it into cocaine, it's no longer natural. It's not in our best interest. The same for sugar. Sugar cane is natural. When we break it down, when you start breaking things down, you really turn it into a drug. So why am I saying that with sex? Is because there are lots of things that we can find attractive doesn't mean it's in our best interest. I mean, if a guy can actually be in a consensual relationship with more than one woman and they know about one another, that guy is in integrity and he deserves that if he can make that work. A lot of guys have a problem making it work with one woman. I mean, that's a problem. But, this study, it would be interesting. So while I was reading this study, I was wondering if they checked to see if any of the couples were cheating. Right? That would be interesting. Hey, look, people have been cheating for a while. You have, what is it? Paternity fraud is 30%. So uh, there have been quite a few women who step out. 30% is a big number. Imagine you're married to a woman, she's pregnant, and as the husband, you think it's yours, and it's really not. And it's not just the US. I lived in Mexico. It happens there. It happens in lots of countries. I won't say all of them. There are some countries, there are more consequences for the women than there are here. So here's what I'm saying, guys. Sex is way more important than what people think. Turning sex into a transaction has you completely miss what sex is capable of doing, and the benefits of creating a relationship. Hell, and people who have sex more often earn higher incomes. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons to have sex aside from creating children. I mean, it refreshes your brain. It's healthy exercise. That's interesting. So, yeah, the study shows that it's great for pair bonding and, of course, it's procreation. Um, there are some societies where the man has more than one wife. It's known he has 3, 4 wives, and they all know about one another, provided he financially can support them. So I don't really have an opinion on that because I don't know if they've done the fine detail of research on that. Now, a man himself is much more capable of pair bonding uh, with more than one woman without having that emotional trauma the way a woman does. Woman's brain and biochemistry just isn't made for that. All right, PJ, I wonder about that. Makeup sex. I read some other article that talked about the makeup sex. It just mentioned it. Here's my concern with makeup sex, PJ. Here's what happens with a lot of couples who have makeup sex. The makeup sex ends up being better than regular sex because they've gotten all worked up, right? Uh, there's an aggression going, and the man may actually perform better when he's like got more testosterone going and he's got this anger. And 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 then there's the woman who's like wanting forgiveness from the guy or wanting peace, like she wants cooperation. So she has sex in a very vulnerable way. And sex after an argument turns out to be hot and steamy. So, what do people do when they find out that sex after an argument is the best sex? They're going to argue every day. even if the relationship is going great, they're going to have to argue so they can have great sex. And those arguments in time, it's just like drugs, right? You do a little bit of heroin and then you need a little more and then a little more. You got to get that vein. Whatever drug you do, like the body builds up some immunity to it, so you need more. And so it's the dopamine rush, right? So, and this is the way dopamine works, right? Whatever secreted dopamine 6 months ago, you're going to need more to secrete it. So that is going to mean the arguments become bigger, they become more frequent, or they become more dangerous. They may tend to become physical. So my concern is couples that enjoy makeup sex. A lot of times they could be on a path to just absolute dysfunction. So I'm always concerned. Hey, PJ, I did an article addressing that African tradition. I might have put it on Patreon. I don't remember. But I addressed traditions. I forget where I put that. I'm always concerned about traditions. If you haven't, it may be on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Because I just question doing things based strictly on it's what was done in the past. It just concerns me. Like we buy into stuff way too fast. So I make a suggestion. Look into it. Yeah, you get it. You know, just because they say, well, it's traditional and everyone does it because it's the tradition. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. I go into it. I talk about that in detail. Oda Beat Goon, thanks for joining. Ignite with Sebastian, thanks for joining. Red Pill Mike, good to see you in the house. See, and PJ, that's the other thing, right? The problem was never solved, right? So with makeup sex, the problem is not solved. But I don't even think they care about that because now makeup sex has become a dopamine high. So that means they're just going to have more and more arguments so that they can have great makeup sex. I don't blame you, country boy. Yep. Like I said, you are going to have to use your network to find her. They exist. Alf Brick, good to see you in the house. So we've been talking about is sex the most important part of relationships? You know, this is Friday night, YouTube and chill. We like talking about sex. And I took, I'll drop the links from the studies and the articles. I talked about what's too much sex. I talked about maintenance sex. And that I'm a little concerned about maintenance sex. I mean, that's better than makeup sex. But maintenance sex, man, that's kind of like, I'm just going to have sex with you so you don't complain. I'm just a little concerned about that. And I don't know if that's the same. You're going to get the same pair bonding. I mean, maybe you can, maybe you can. And then I talked about a study that took place recently over the past 4 years where they looked at married couples and the effects of having sex and the impact it had on a satisfying marriage. So I'll drop that study. I read an article from that. and I read parts of the study itself. Let's see. So I'm going to leave you guys with one last article. Why sex is good for your relationship. And this is based on the study. I pulled out the study already. Why sex is good for your relationship. This is the Greater Good magazine, science-based insights for a meaningful life. So they're not just giving ideas. This is science-based. Why sex is good for you. New research on sex relationships shows the real reason it can benefit yours. Written by Susan Krauss Whitborn. Oh yeah, I had some articles by Psychology Today. This is August 3rd, 2017. We associate good relationships with sexuality, assuming quite naturally that happy couples have sex more often than their miserable counterparts. Unless they're doing makeup sex, PJ, right? But have you ever considered just what it is about sex that makes it so beneficial to a couple's relationship? A new and extremely well-conducted investigation by Annick DeBrat and her colleagues points to the surprising role not of sex itself, but the affection that accompanies sexuality between partners. Over a series of 4 separate studies, DeBrat and her fellow researchers were able to pinpoint the way that everyday kissing, hugging, and touch between partners contribute uniquely to relationship satisfaction and overall well-being. Let's break this sex happiness equation down for a moment before looking at the details of the study. The researchers began with the well-established finding that individuals experience higher levels of well-being when they have an active and satisfying sex life. As they noted, the results of previous research demonstrating that the size of the difference in well-being for people having sex once a week compared with those having sex less than once a month was greater than the size of the difference in well-being for those making $75,000 compared with $25,000. So your well-being and having sex, and studies show that most couples have sex 54 times a year. Newlyweds could have it 114 times a year, but most average couples been together a while. They have sex 54 times a year, so that's basically once a week, and I guess a couple of holidays, Valentine's and a birthday. So they're saying the difference between having sex once a week and less than once a month is a bigger difference than making $75,000 a year or $25,000 a year. That's the kind of impact it has on your life and your well-being. Is it the sex itself or something about sexual activity that is so good for our happiness? You might argue that people who are happier are more likely to have sex more often because they're in a good relationship and are satisfied with it. The good sex then would simply follow the good relationship dynamics. It's also possible that people who are more positive in general are more likely to get involved in a close relationship, which in turn benefits their well-being. Such cyclical process would imply that the happy just get happier. The authors believe that the key ingredient in the sex happiness relationship is positive emotion. As they note, however, it's extremely difficult to examine this possibility through the typical questionnaire method, which is subject to memory bias, or in the lab, where the situation is artificial. Instead, the fourth and most telling of the studies used the daily diary method. The researchers gave the participants smartphones to use for recording their responses, all of which were collected over the course of 2 weeks when the participants periodically received signals from the phone to complete the assessment. The participants were 58 heterosexual couples averaging 25 years of age and in a relationship on average for 4 years. A previous study in the series, analyzing daily diaries reports from a larger and somewhat more diverse sample working parents, showed that people rated their positive emotions higher when they indicated they had had sex in the previous 24 hours. So just think about that. Sex gives you a more positive emotion. And that's, well, I'll get on with this, but that's what the study was showing. They had a number of 48 hours. The impact of sex on happiness was accounted for in large part by increases in affection linked to prior sexual activity. For this smartphone-based study, which asked only about sexual activity and affectionate moments, participants simply answered whether they'd had sex since the last report, whether they'd engaged in a moment of love and affection with their partner. So that's interesting. So they gave them smartphones and sent them messages, I guess, just intermittently, and wanted to see where their state of mind was, and saw that, there was a correlation between a healthy state of mind and the last time they had had sex. And that in that fourth study, researchers tracked the daily course of sex and affection. This allowed them to study the effects of sex on day 1 with affection on day 2 and vice versa over the entire course of the study period. The results confirmed the study's hypothesis that across days of the study, sex predicts affection, and affection in turn predicts sexual activity. The study can't prove causation because participants weren't assigned to experimental groups of sex, no sex, or affection, no affection. But given that such a study would be practically impossible to conduct and likely produce artificial results, the analytic strategy used by the researchers provides as strong evidence as a possible of the sex-affection link. As the authors concluded, sex seems not only beneficial because of its psychological or hedonic effects, but because it promotes a stronger and more positive connection with the partner. Over time, such experiences build to strengthen the bonds between partners, meaning that their long-term relationship satisfaction is bolstered as well. These effects extend to the experience of one's partner because, as shown when partners' responses were analyzed in terms of their effects on each other. When one person draws emotional benefits from sex, their partner's relationship satisfaction is also promoted over time. If affection is so important to the personal and relationship satisfaction, one intriguing question raised by this study is whether it can replace sexual activity when couples lessen the frequency of having sex due to external factors. People may decrease their sexual activity as they get older due to physical changes, and couples who have recently had children may similarly have sex less often. But as long as couples maintain their affection towards each other, they can offset the potentially negative effects of lowered sexual activity. Conversely, for couples who feel they're drifting apart and are therefore having sex less often, if they work on their physical affection towards each other, their sexual relationship may become reestablished as well. To sum it up, fulfillment in relationships depends on many factors, of which the physical nature of the interaction is just one. This study shows that the physical basis for a couple's interactions with each other does play a surprising, strong, and powerful role. And in the study that I wrote, not only did they have people, fill out forms, they actually had them come into an office and talk. So they spoke to them as well. So these have been, there are a number of quite thorough studies around this. So So yes, so we are learning still more. I think we still haven't even scratched the tip of the iceberg in understanding sex. PJ, I think you're saying duty sex is maintenance sex. Yeah, exactly. Country boy, I'm telling you, man, go through your network. There are that the woman that you'd want is out there for sure. You just have to make sure you understand what she's going to need from you because your demands are clear. So here's the bottom line. Withholding sex damages a relationship. Transactional sex damages a relationship. One of the things that men and women need to get clear on is that sex is mutual. And based on these studies, it's mutually beneficial. So if women are having sex to do you a favor, then she has no clue on the impact sex has on her when she allows sex to naturally happen and enjoy it. So I guess one of the things you want to watch out for is you don't want to be a woman's third string man because she couldn't get the guy she really wanted, and she couldn't even get the second guy. She may have less sexual interest in you. Women who have had too many sexual partners, I talked about what happens if she goes beyond 5 different sexual partners and who have a pair bonding is hurt. So sex actually facilitates pair bonding. And if you want to avoid divorce, you want continuous pair bonding. You want that intimacy, especially in that first year. I mean, I think sex once a week is not very much. I understand. Uh, people have children, they have jobs, they put in 14 hours a day. I understand all these things, but if that's what they say, the average is 54 times a year, man. That's probably once a week. No, that's probably a couple of weeks that might have been missed. And then you have Valentine's Day, 2 birthdays. So, uh, so I'll say that pair bonding is important. And there are all kinds of comments about what's more important than sex. But if you lay the pipe right for a woman, she's going to bond with you. She just is. I mean, she's got to work really hard, or she's got to be suffering from a mental illness, like something like hybristophilia, where she gets sexually aroused from men who are criminals or men who cheat on their spouse or drug dealers, murderers, that kind of thing. But generally, a woman she's designed to bond with you. So if she's avoiding that, you want to think about, is she really worth your effort? For me, and I wouldn't suggest this for anyone else, for me, if a woman wants withhold sex, I'm done. That's it. That's a game I won't play. So Imperator, one I just named hybristophilia. Hybristophilia is a mental illness, and it's women who get. Let's see if I'll spell it properly. I just put it in the chat. Hybristophilia is a mental disorder where the person is sexually aroused. They're more easily sexually aroused by someone who's a criminal, a rapist, believe it or not, a rapist, a murderer, a drug dealer, cheats on their spouse, they lie, there are women who are literally aroused. They will climax for that guy because her arousal, what that for her is predicated on that guy being a criminal of some sort or something like that, someone who violates social rules, social structures. So if you're not that guy, she may she may have a problem climaxing. You could have women who've been raped or molested at a young age, and she never dealt with it properly. I don't want to go on that path without too long, but I'll just say this: there are women who get raped all over the world. The U.S. part of our culture is a victim culture, so there are women who get raped or molested in other countries and have no problem climaxing. They just don't. Somehow their ability to deal with that incident doesn't have them traumatized for life. But here in the US, we're fragile. We don't get through things very well. So that's a problem. So those are just some of the reasons, Imperator. You can be laying it well, but if a woman's been raped or molested, that's going to be a mental block. And technically, like according to female gynecologists, a woman is able to climax in 5 minutes. A healthy woman is able to climax. And I lived in countries where that happened like clockwork, 5 minutes. In 10 minutes, it was twice. In 15 minutes, it was 3 times. It was like every time. Can you save your lives? And so that's another part. So those women had those experiences because they had a very healthy attitude, one towards sex, and they had a much healthier attitude towards men. So you could say, owned, right, and were comfortable with their sex drive and their desire to enjoy sex. They didn't look at it as being something that's dirty or bad. Yeah, Imperator, 5 minutes. Hey, Imperator, I've seen women climax as soon as you fully penetrate. Boom! Like seconds after, I've seen that. I think those women are turned on, I guess not by criminals. They're really turned on by the guys. So, look, laying the pipe is really important in the bedroom, but also understanding what happens before you get to the bedroom. And so if you look at the study that I just read, right? So those studies that talk about how it increases intimacy and pair bonding. The stronger your pair bonding and the intimacy, I think it's easier for a woman to climax. But yeah, I've seen women just like clockwork, and they were not faking. Just some things you can't fake. But 5 minutes like clockwork. Yeah. And it wasn't just me. It was other guys because there were other guys from the US and we were all like, wow, like each time with the same woman and then with a different woman, it was the same outcome for me and other men. So it wasn't just me, and we talked about these things. So really just a healthier attitude towards sex and a healthier attitude towards men, not having men be the enemy and women being comfortable enjoying sex. I mean, hell, I'll just tell you, it was living in Mexico. That's where it happened. And even with women, like I used to go to certain places to eat every day, and man, women I didn't know would be, who worked in these places, like these outdoor kind of market, they'd be talking to me and about me with one another and asking me, so who are you having sex with? Like they were pretty open about discussing sex. So just very different attitude. And even when I hung out with Mayan Indians in the jungle, very interesting to hear the attitudes towards sex that women had. Oh, okay, Ashley. Yes, yes, yes. I'll do that. I'll save it. Yeah, for sure. Uh, hey, look, Imperator. To my knowledge, yes, I stayed with. So I lived in one village that had 329 people, and there was a second village with 500 something. I stayed there a few, on a few occasions, different occasions. And both times I stayed with different families. But the one I lived in, I stayed with a family. Um, so the answer is yes. To the extent I understand infidelity. So of course, I didn't see the infidelity. With 330 people, you'd really have to sneak. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but man, and it probably can more easily happen because the men are out in the field working in an agricultural capacity. So a man could sneak off and mess around with someone else's wife. I just personally didn't see it. Yeah. Uh, the family I stayed with had several daughters. One was 23, the other one was 21, and the other one was 18. And the 18-year-old was about to marry some guy, but I think she was available to me, except I didn't want to mess around out there. Uh, yeah, because they could have easily disposed of me and buried me, and I wouldn't be here now, and no one would have ever knew where to find me. So, uh, good question, Ashley. um, that's one way to do it. Yeah, that's one way is to move to those countries. What you would have to. There are many aspects of their lives you would have to embrace. So when I lived out in Belize with Mayan Indians, they had at that time they had no electricity or running water, but I think shortly afterwards they did because I stayed with the family and that man was the mayor and he was telling me that they were going to get it soon. But still they farmed without machinery. So you'd have a very different life than what you're accustomed to, even if you bring conveniences with you. Uh, there's a culture that if you went there to destroy, the men might address you. I saw the men were very protective of their culture, their village, their women. So if a man does, he has to be smart about it. Well, so one of my concerns also is that many of the problems that men here have in the U.S., men cannot, a lot of men cannot see how they contributed to it. And the way they contributed is women have entitlement because men competed with one another, were one up in one another, and women got accustomed to that and entitled. So now men don't like that, the entitlement, except when men go to other countries, they still exhibit the same behavior that created entitlement in the US. So that eventually they're going to end up with the same problem in another country. So I'm giving you a conflicting answer to say I'm not sure going somewhere else is like going to be the absolute solution because you could still end up with the same problem just somewhere else. It's just a recognizable pattern, and no one's really talking about it. So It could be a short-term solution, and it could be long-term for a lot of guys, but be prepared to embrace the culture and the language also. A country boy, I don't know if sex is nasty anywhere, but I get what you're saying. Um, there are things that women can do that can hurt her body. So I know where you're coming from. Yeah, I mean, Imperator, with such a small amount of people, it's difficult to hide, right? It's difficult to hide bad behavior. Except, I would assume it happens. And the reason I'm saying that because I'm not going to say that I was something special. So the family I stayed with, they had an 18-year-old daughter, and I think I could have laid her down. I just She was available. I just didn't want to risk because I was out there by myself and I was too far. Man, I was in the jungle, and I just didn't think it would have been as smart. Like, I didn't want to risk the possibility of bringing shame. So I'm saying her as a woman, and whatever, maybe she had curiosity about me and that was it, because she was gonna marry that guy. Like, for sure. I know she married him. So while I get what you're saying, and I know the men are very protective of their culture and their village. Here's what I also learned in Parator. No matter where I went through 8 countries, and no matter which country, whether I was in the jungle, I was in the jungles of Costa Rica, I was in cities, I was in tourist areas, I was off the beaten trail. People were people. I heard stories of the man marrying one woman, except another woman wanted him, and she was jealous, and the kind of drama that still happened out there. So uh, I found the same human paradigm in all these countries that I saw here in Washington D.C., Jersey, New York. But I still saw human beings dealing with love and happiness and jealousy and anger, and they all eat, sleep, go to the bathroom. I saw everything as the human element was the same no matter where I went. So I get what you're saying. So um, the village, the Mayan village that had 500 people, they had just gotten television 30 days before I'd gotten there. And if you heard this before, I apologize. But within 30 days of them getting electricity, now they had television. So, and the young guys, late teens, early 20s, they saw something on television that influenced them. They saw the Bloods and the Crips. And what did they do? They started spray painting on places, Bloods and Crips. They start bullying women around in the village. And within 30 days, the elder men called a town hall meeting. And they said, the parents of the boys who are bullying, you know who your sons are. We're not going to point fingers. Here's the deal. This is how it's going down. Either you stop them or we stop them. And if we stop them, you're going to find them dead in the jungle. And the parents talk to their kids and it stopped just like that. So, yes, the men are very protective and there are consequences. And their culture is their law. So yes, what you're saying, there's loyalty and seriousness, and there's strong penalties for breaking societal rules. Yes, there are, and then there is still the human being that I saw it. I still saw the same human paradigm. It just didn't matter. And this is the reason why. Now think about that, right? You take a woman from the jungle and you bring her here, she's going to be influenced by television, movies, and the women who tell her she can get more out of you as a man. And that it happens so often. Women start doing crazy things because they're being influenced and they're being told, "Oh, he's using you and you should get more from him. Just divorce him." It's crazy. It's because the human being is still the same. So someone on Instagram was saying, should guys move to those countries? That's a better bet, and that's a whole different conversation. I think that causes bigger problems that no one's looking at long term. There are other problems that creates. If the guys with the most money take off and live there, that's just a whole nother set of problems. So yeah, country boy, that's what I was just laying out, right? So you know, I, we get into this whole, is it patriarchy or matriarchy? But ultimately, men and women live and work together, and it's men and women who have to make these decisions together. You just need women who have a higher level of accountability and understand consequences and understand there's a role men play and a role women play, and they don't never need to play the same role, even though they can both be in leadership positions because they both have impact and influence over society. Uh, the way a man's brain works, we do have a benefit. Women brains they worry about stuff that men just don't worry about. That's just, and that's not an opinion. That is scientifically proven in neuroscience. So as men, we're more emotionally stable, especially if we come out of a two-parent household. And there are things that we can be responsible for that benefit. There are things women can be responsible. So, technically we need both. We just unfortunately live in a country where women have been told they don't need us and they can do without us and they can be the mother and the father. And we see that doesn't work. So we've gotten ourselves in quite a mess. And if we are going to correct it, technically it's going to be men that can correct it. We could stand by and let it crash and burn, but it's like being on a plane and letting it crash and burn just to prove that the pilot couldn't fly. I don't think that's in our best interest. It's like I was saying to the woman on Instagram, even if you go to another country, you still have the mindset that you have here. So you can end up going to another country and creating other problems. Men and women need to really sit down, and women are going to have to do something that they've been proving for the past few decades is they don't listen, and they are going to have to really listen to what men are saying. And we're going to have to come up with decisions that are in our best interest. Withholding sex is it's kind of criminal. I mean, that's an exaggerated way to put it. But just looking at the studies and the research, the benefits, the quality of life, the physical health, the intimacy of the relationship, why would any person deny their partner sex? 38% of marriages are sexless, and higher frequency of sex is also seen by people who have a higher frequency of sex have earned higher incomes and have more fulfilling relationships. So men and women need to learn how to ensure their partner is fulfilled, and whatever you need to do that, you need to shut your mouth and hear what they're saying. So guys, I thought I was going to be done at least 45 minutes ago on this. I'll drop the links in the description so you can look at these articles if you want to study through some more. This Sunday, I'm going to have a show called Straight Talk, where we talk straight. This was Friday's YouTube and Chill. YouTube and Chill. I like to talk about sex and intimacy the more intimate parts of relationships. And on Sundays with Straight Talk, I talk about could be relationships with social challenges, but it is a really brutally blunt, straight talk. And I appreciate the Cash Apps that have supported me. Thank you. And I appreciate the support all of you have given me. I'm going to share it in Instagram. I'll save it. Share this video. If you haven't subscribed to me, smash that bell. Like this video if you haven't already. And your support and contributions have been great. It allows me to do what I do is really look at it from a research perspective. So I'm not just giving my attitude, and then I can share personal things that I've seen through traveling. Any questions you have are always appreciated, guys. So like this video, leave your comments, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It's just Ted Santos on YouTube or Santos Ted on Instagram. Yes, this is on YouTube also. Yes, Ashley. Yep. Live streaming on YouTube, and and share this one. Yeah. So ladies should definitely hear about these studies, especially those who think they're doing men a favor. Sex is not a favor, Jack. It's bigger than us. So hey, have a great weekend, everyone. Talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.